Good morning and welcome to Love It, a podcast about loving stuff. My name is Daniel Thrawn. You may recognize my voice from Martini Giant, a podcast about movies, which you can check out at www.martinigiant.com. This podcast isn't necessarily about movies, but people come here to talk about things they love. Ideas, concepts, lines from books, moments in time, people, history, anything. If you're interested in being on Love It, I'd love to have you. And you can reach me at dthrawn on Twitter, or you can check out my YouTube page at dthrawn as well. So let's see. Today, what do I love? I love the novel The Yiddish Policeman's Union by Michael Chabon. It's a great mystery and a strange setting that feels a lot like a really bittersweet version of Fargo. It's set in an alternate history in which Israel wasn't established in the Middle East, but rather in Alaska. And the plot of the book takes place in the last days before that country is becoming part of the United States. It's funny, it's sad, and it's very, very beautiful. Let's see, what else? I also love The Long Goodbye, a Robert Altman movie with Elliot Gould. If you haven't seen the Robert Altman movie, I'm not sure this is the right first one to watch. I'd start with maybe something like The Player or McCabe and Mrs. Miller, maybe. This one's a little bit more out there. Stars Elliot Gould, and he is sort of a disaffected and out-of-touch detective in Los Angeles in the 1970s. And it's another bittersweet murder mystery story. It's very funny and very weird, but it has kind of my vote for the coolest film I've ever seen, and I've seen it probably a couple of dozen times. But today I love talking to Fred Galpern. Fred is an old friend of mine, and as you'll hear, we worked together when we were very young at Looking Glass Studios, the video game company that made Thief the Dark Project, among other things. We talk about that, and we talk about Fred's love of music. Fred is a wonderful musician, and you can check out the show notes for a link to his work. And I think that Martini Giant fans might like this one a lot. It's almost like having Fred on that podcast. This is my conversation with Fred Galpern, and I hope you love it. You brought notes? You really?
Oh yeah, there's so much I want to talk about on this subject. So yeah.
Well, it has been a while since we've gotten to hang out and talk. But you and I've known each other since 1998.
Yeah. Is that 25 years? Is my math right?
That is something like that. Yeah. So this is a couple of old timers settling down at the bar. Yes. Going to do some maximum chill time. I'm very psyched to hear this. This is Fred Galpern that I'm with today. He and I worked at a place called Looking Glass Studios a long, long time ago, and we made a video game there that became it wasn't successful, but it was the foundation of a lot of video games today, which I'm proud to say. And so we've both gone off on totally different paths since then. But I can definitely tell you that Fred was one of the most energetic, awesome to work with folks that I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. And we would we would get together and have this blend of work, intensity, and ridiculousness that has rarely been matched in my life.
Wow.
So I'm happy to plug back into that today. Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Galpern.
Well, thank you, Dan Thrawn. I am honored by that intro. I had worked in some creative stuff, but it was all like very kind of entry level stuff. And then I get whisked away into this world of making video games thanks to our mutual friend, Jennifer Roboto Lesser. She got me an interview at Looking Glass, and then not long after got the job and met you, Dan. And I remember the very long lunches. And in particular, we'll see if you remember the movie. We turned a lunch into a movie afternoon. We engaged in the glory of that long walk over that bridge to where that mall was, and we went to see Toy Story 2.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Yes.
When we should have been finishing the cutscenes for Thief 2.
Yeah, well, hey, you have to have inspiration, right?
Yeah.
You can't just work all the time. Sometimes you have to have a 6 to 7 hour lunch starting at around 9.
It's just what you need that day.
And go to Bertucci's along the way and maybe Dunkin' Donuts on the way back. Yeah. Right. Sometimes you just need to do that and be paid for it.
Maybe stop into Newberry Comics and see what new DVDs came out that day.
It's a dense agenda. So this for people that don't know, this podcast is about stuff you love, and I don't necessarily know what the hell people are going to come here and talk about. Only that it's something that they can't help but talk about, and so I have a little hint from you as to what this is. But what is the thing you love, Fred?
All right, so I'm just gonna. Like I said, I have some notes. I'm just gonna tear in. The thing I love is music. So like this whole thing, this is why I said just before, like it's kind of a nice segue. Dan, recently on some of your other work, I've heard you being kind of loud and clear about no guilty pleasures and kind of this idea of if you don't like something, that's cool, but shut up. Let other people like what they like. If you also like something, then great, get into that excitement and share. And so what I think I've realized about myself being a fan is going way back into the 80s. One example is there were cool bands to like when I was a teenager, and there were bands that it was very uncool to like. Bon Jovi or George Michael. In 1986, 87, me being kind of a heavy metal kid, I loved those two acts, but I wouldn't tell anyone except like maybe the girls that I was hanging out with. But in later years, it's like, wait, what's wrong with that? They made great music.
Oh, and absolutely.
So, as I get older, it's been nice to sort of let that kind of BS go and just enjoy what I enjoy. And then what I realized is like being a fan of all the things I'm a fan of, specifically in music, has led to all these great experiences and friendships. And in more recent years, having my own band and putting music out and actually having one of my favorite singers ever contribute to my album. It was an EP.
That's fantastic. This is fantastic.
Yeah. So I'll get there, but that's like a little tease, right? Of where we might be headed.
That's some good podcasting you're doing right there. I like that.
Oh, good.
Keep the
lead. All right. So, like that's it. And I'm a huge podcast fan. I listen to all kinds of stuff. Recently, I was listening to 10% Happier. Do you know that one?
I've never heard it. Yeah, I know the name, but I've never actually listened to it.
It's really good. I think the host's name is Dan Harris, and it's all about mindfulness and that kind of stuff. Creativity is all interwoven. And one of the recent episodes, I forget the guest's name. So I think 2 women researchers, and they're talking about creativity and being a creative person, but then also like creativity is obviously therapeutic to people that make things, but being a beholder of movies, television, art, whatever it might be, music, that's also therapeutic in a very similar way. So again, like I just have these issues. I grew up as, one of maybe a handful of creative kids in my town. Certainly in my family, nobody understood me. So being an older person and learning about these things, there's just that validation is really cool to experience. So anyway, that's like another thing of like, I'm very much a beholder. In fact, I'm a beholder more often than I am a maker.
What you seem to be pointing at, and I think I agree with this, is like the action of experiencing art, right, is like when you're making art, you are experiencing art, right? And when you're beholding art, like you're saying, you're experiencing art. Like that's the actual sort of goal. One is very hands-on, and you're sort of directing the flow of it for yourself, and the other one is you're letting the flow be directed for you. But it's basically the same experience.
Yeah, exactly. And with the best version of both of those, tracks, if you will, when I'm having my best time being creative, which these days is most often playing music, I'm in that flow state and I'm not thinking, I'm just doing and loving moment after moment after moment. Just so happy that I am where I am. And in the best films or TV shows or listening to music or reading comic books or books, whatever it is, when I'm experiencing something super wonderful, I find I'm in a very similar, maybe the same flow state. And it's just the moments go by and I'm just really glad I'm having the experience.
Yeah. You brought up that, it's a therapeutic experience to let yourself fall into a piece of art. And I would say like art has been core to me figuring my shit out as much as any human interaction I can think of. Like,
oh, yes.
It is like there are obviously people in my life that I value more than that, like who give me that same experience. But even some bullshit stuff where I'm just like, I just gotta watch a fucking Jason Statham movie.
I did see Crank one more time.
One more time and get back on track. It opens your brain in a way that helps organize it, and denoise it, or defrag it,
That's a great way of saying it.
And I feel like the biggest struggle I see with people, it's like when you bring up with the 80s when, it wasn't cool to like George Michael, so you don't talk about George Michael. Like what that really says to me is the people that we're going to make fun of you for liking George Michael. First of all, they have no taste. Second of all, what they don't like is the fact that this makes them self-conscious. And when you block art out like that, that's when it makes you mad, or it sort of like it complicates stuff for you. Whereas if you try to sort of keep your brain open about it, then even if it's not your vibe, you can start to understand the vibe and find that flow state with it.
Yeah, I don't know that I ever get to a flow state with stuff that isn't resonating with me, but I find ways to appreciate it. Like a good example is live music. I really, really love going to see live music. But often, whether it's a band that I thought I would like live, or maybe it's something like jazz or whatever kind of music that isn't normally my taste, and I'm not getting that fix, but often I can, focus on the drums and just watch what the drummer's doing, listen to what the drummer's doing. And I may not get to the flow state, but I'm appreciating it. And I'm over that, that wall that I might put up.
You're not resisting it.
Exactly.
You're not resisting it anymore. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Because when you bring up like that's what, cause I do like jazz in a very sort of a limited selection of jazz for a certain time period that I really like. But that's exactly what got me into it. It's just like, you can pinpoint a thing about what one of the players is doing and be like, well, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like that little bit, the song may be too repetitive or whatever it is, like, but that's not the point. Like, it's watching what this dude here is doing with his little bit of it, with his little tract of land, is exciting in itself. And so it's like it's the artist. It's less the what's being produced and more seeing where this dude is at.
Yeah.
Where the artist is at in that moment.
Right. And then you may find you're getting something different from that than you would from, like a U2 song or something. It's all music, but you're getting something different from jazz, let's say. This reminds me of, this is going to sound a little insider, but Jen Rabota-Lesser, who we were talking about earlier, her husband Ryan is a very close friend of mine. And he has this saying, we kind of joke about it. Our tastes in music have diverged over the years. When we were teenagers, we played music together often. And it was, like cover songs, 80s rock stuff. And then he went way towards like heavy metal stuff. And I stayed with like mainstream rock mostly. And he would recommend stuff to me over the years. And anytime my reaction was, didn't do it for me, he would just shake his head and go, you're just not ready for it. I love that because he was kind of teasing Mud, but he's kind of right. Like maybe someday it'll be
Someday it'll land.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah,
Cannibal Corpse might be right for me when I'm in my 60s.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You're just like, you're sitting there like, oh, just what is this? This is really lovely. That's Cannibal Corpse, sir.
Excellent.
That's
Can
wonderful.
you make it louder?
I love when we do impressions of our older selves. Right? They always have a weird accent.
Well, we watch too much Simpsons, probably.
Exactly. I'm always sort of like a version of Christopher Walken's Colonel Angus, like out on the porch drinking lemonade. Well, that's what I would have done. Then why are you talking like that, Dan? Yeah. You're from New Jersey,
and I'm just copying you. So,
hey, that's how it is. It's okay. Yeah. Is there anything that you have that you hated early on, but now you've come to embrace?
I don't know that there's anything I hated. Something that I never found a way into that is like, well, I'll give you two actually. First is Joni Mitchell. I mean, everyone raves about Joni Mitchell. I have another one. It wasn't cool in the 80s, at least in my circle, to love Prince. But not only did I love Prince, I did a radio show with a friend who wanted to do a radio show focused only on the band Kiss.
Oh yeah, now we're talking.
And I hated Kiss. And by the way, I still hate Kiss. I just don't like the music. Whatever. And so we made a bargain. It was going to be half Kiss and half Prince. What is that mashup? But even then, I was like, I don't care what anyone thinks. I like what I like. The reason I mention that is Prince was always talking about Joni Mitchell. And so I'd read interviews and I would try again and again to get into Joni Mitchell. And it wasn't until at some point during the pandemic, just looking for some new thing to listen to at home, I finally got into some Joni Mitchell. And
nice.
I can't say she's one of my favorites, but I found a way. So never hated her, but
it clicked. Yeah,
it clicked in a way it never had.
Yeah, actually, that sort of happened to me with Mitchell as well, because it wasn't until her later recording of Both Sides Now, like the original one, I was like, it's kind of cornball, And then now I'm like, oh my god, that's crushingly sad, and now I can't listen to that without being like deeply affected. Then I went back and listened to her old stuff, and I was like, I actually like this. This is really beautiful. Yeah. So it's just like I don't know where I wasn't anti Joni Mitchell, but I was just like I didn't see it.
Yeah.
And which is weird because the song is Both Sides Now. It's about having that same sort of perspective change to see that something is different than it was, and like it was like a recursive musical experience.
Yeah.
I'm just like I am literally looking back on my earlier self and reappreciating this. Thanks a lot, you magician.
Well, and that's a great example of the you're just not ready for it. In that case, it was true.
Yeah, I was totally not ready for it. That's a great point. That's a great point.
You just didn't have the experience or whatever it was to appreciate it. The other one I was going to say, and this one is a lot more accessible and a lot more popular, was Bob Dylan. The sound of his voice, the words always got me. I always thought the words were brilliant, but the sound of his voice just kept me away. It was just like a wall that I couldn't get over.
Yeah, it wasn't your thing, right?
Yeah. And then at some point in my 40s, for whatever reason, that went away. And I kind of did a deep dive, and I've since read some books about the making of certain albums and things. And I can't get enough Dylan these days. Eddie Vedder did a bunch of Dylan covers over the years. He's probably my favorite singer of all time. And I think hearing him interpret Dylan songs helped me see Dylan songs differently and hear the voice differently.
Right. He cracked it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yep.
My experience of music and sort of like, I think a lot of people like get all their music at once when they're young, and then they just sort of lock into that as their music. And then they don't continue to grow with it or expand it or anything like that. They just go like, I like my Boston, and it's going to be Boston.
Yep.
That's that. You know, and now they're 50 blah, and they're still like riding that one track.
Right.
You know?
The playlist was made. They don't need a new one.
There it is. Exactly. And I mean, I get that for sure. But looking at like my own musical, I don't want to be. This is not a story where I'm just like, oh, I'm so enlightened. I would say most of the time my mind is shut. But it hits these moments every like 4 or 5 years where it's like, all right, it's time to clean out the old stuff and put in the new selections. And and so you look at like my, look at my playlists or look at the albums I have, and there's this very predictable 4 or 5 year leaps where I'm just into this for this much time, and then something new comes along, and then I'm into this new like it could be older music, could be newer music, or whatever it is. But it sort of resets. I mean, I still like the other stuff. It just goes out of my playlist.
Yeah.
And then there's this new locked set that I sort of grind away at. And I'm not sure why that is. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody else who operates like that.
Yeah, my timeline is different, but the basic philosophy is similar. What happens for me is I'll become like, not of everything I hear, but certain things that just completely register with me. So I'll give you the list. It's U2, Pearl Jam, Radiohead. I mean, this is all mainstream stuff. A guy named Johnny Polanski, who you may not have heard of, I'll talk about a little bit. Pernice Brothers, a Boston guy, Joe Pernice, who I just saw, by the way, a few days ago. And for those acts, I'll have that initial period where that's all I want to listen to. I could even listen to one album on repeat for weeks at a time. And then, that'll fade and something new will come across. But then that will stick for years, that I'll go back to whatever that act is, and it'll continue to work for me. What I've noticed as I get older, now that I'm in my 50s, is I've used things up. And maybe you're using things up a little faster than I do.
Right.
And so U2 is a great example. The Joshua Tree, from the day that record came out, I cut school to go with my friend to buy the CD. His mom worked, so we went back to his house. No one was home. Climbed out on his roof, and we smoked some things and enjoyed that record. And I literally did not stop listening to that album for months. And then for years, even though I'd go off and enjoy other things, I'd come back to the Joshua Tree. It was the main thing for me for years and years and years. And then, you get older. At some point in my late 40s, my daughter's really into music now, and I wanted to play that record for her. And I played it for her, and her reaction isn't really important. But what I noticed for myself was it was used up. I wasn't.
That was it.
Yeah, I wasn't connecting with it. I wasn't getting that feeling of euphoria that I used to get.
Right.
So maybe you're having a similar experience, but on a shorter.
Yeah, you might be right. That's very interesting, because I think because you also brought up Radiohead. Yeah. I love Radiohead, but I don't currently listen to a lot of Radiohead. Like I don't like it. That's another one where it's just not in my sets right now, right? And I think I did in a sense reach at least close to what you're describing, where I was like, if I keep on repeating this, it's going to numb that nerve out.
Yeah.
And I need to retain this as a special thing.
Right.
So it's time to put it away for a little while.
Yeah.
Because man, they're so baked in. All those albums are so baked into my head. I can play them as a background soundtrack instantly in my mind. But you don't want to lose touch with that channel. So maybe I'm subconsciously sort of like putting them aside until they can get some electricity back in there.
I mean, you'll only know is, in some time, if you go back to them, do they give you some of that feeling again? Yeah,
exactly. Now, and do you, are you active about finding new music, or is this passively come to you?
Well, a little of both. So I do streaming because it's just so easy, but I also hate streaming because of discovery. The discovery experience with streaming music is terrible, to the point of even bands that I know and love. When you go, I use Apple Music, not Spotify. So I apologize if Spotify is way better at this. I only know Apple Music. When I go and I search an artist's name, often it will bring up the artist. And I always go to albums. I'm an old guy. For me, it's about the album, never about individual songs. And sometimes the albums will be out of order, or an album just will be missing. And then you search by the album title and it shows up. Like, so that's, discovery of something you're actually looking for. But new discovery, I'm trying, unconsciously, I think I'm trying to emulate the 70s and 80s experience of like I got Rolling Stone or Spin Magazine or whatever magazine, and there was a review of a record. And I didn't care if it was positive or negative. It was more about what the writer said about the record.
Yeah.
And if that piqued my interest, I'd go buy the CD or the vinyl if it was earlier. And so I try to emulate that with the internet to varying degrees of success and failure.
Right.
More often what happens these days is I'll have a friend, like pretty much all my friends know I'm just crazy about music. And so I'll get recommendations from people. Actually, here's a great example. Very recently, my college roommate, Brendan McGlynn, who, we've stayed friends all these years. He sent me a text out of the blue. Hey, you ever hear of the band White Reaper? I'd never heard of them. Think you might like them. I went and I listened to them, and for the last 2 or 3 weeks, that is all I've been listening to.
That's the jam.
It's so freaking good. It is. It's alt rock, but it's also a little poppy. They have like almost like doo-wop style melodies over these hard guitars and drums. Anyway,
that's wild, dude. That's wild.
So yeah, I'll take it. My son recommends music. My daughter. I'll take it from wherever it comes.
Who is there someone in your life that has contributed the most to this pool? That their recommendations are going to be important to you, or they have accumulated like the most points
I have to say,
in the Fred Galpern musical.
Yeah, I don't want to let anyone down who thinks they might fill that role.
It might be the one.
Right. There is no one that always gets my taste. I think because my tastes are kind of all over the place. Right. Not that that's a pat on the back. It's kind of a pain in the ass because I don't even know where to look sometimes. But if I had to pick, I could name like 2 people that have had a great record as far as recommending. One is my buddy Ryan, who I already talked about. And then actually his cousin, Mike, who I know since I'm a teenager. He and I used to play music together. And he's the one that introduced me to, I was already into a few things in the mid 80s, but it was becoming friends with Mike that broadened my horizons. So like Dire Straits,
oh sure,
a lot of British stuff. He would introduce me. Duran Duran, that was another one. Was like, Duran Duran is not for cool dudes. It's for other people. Yeah. And he would would play it all the time, and I got super into it. And he's the one that really got me very into U2.
Yeah. Yeah, U2 definitely hit me. Like when it was what was it? Boy, I think
that's their first.
That was
album.
the one that I was just like, I was just like, good Lord, like absolutely, like, there's loads of stuff I love after that for sure, but like, Boy was so, sort of shitty, that I was just like, that's it. It's so perfectly intense and kind of unskilled.
Yeah.
Compared to where they go.
It's a very garage style record, clearly made by teenagers.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And that I think that really plugged into, and I believe I still have that sort of sensibility today, where I'm just like the clarity of intention is more important to me than execution by a million miles in almost every way. Like I want to be like, it doesn't matter that you fucked it up. It matters that you loved it. Like that's it.
Are you familiar with the YouTuber Casey Neistat?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think he's a shining example of that ethos, like scribbling for title cards and grabbing the camera and throwing it around or whatever, doing this to frame it. Like it's not about the perfection, it's about the passion and the energy.
Right. Because you can really lose yourself in perfection. You can really polish out the stuff that makes a thing connect with someone. Yeah. And I love there's loads of movies and that are highly, just brilliantly produced and highly intricate, and all the technical execution is fantastic. That also work as movies, that are also great movies. But I'm just as likely to fall in love with something where you see the, like you can see the fake parts.
But I mean, in other mediums, give me a sketchbook over the fully inked and colored graphic novel. I'll take the sketchbook any day. Give me the demo versions of some songs I love versus the studio pristine recordings. I want the demos, the rawness.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, it's like one of my favorite albums. Do you know Idan? You ever,
No, I don't think so.
like spraying your tape deck? Like, like he's this. Yes, I don't know. You should just look up Idan spraying your tape deck. I guess it's a collection of these weird little singles, and it's obviously recorded in this dude's bedroom. It's just hysterical. But it's one of the albums I go. It's very short, but it's one of the albums I go back to the most.
Yeah.
Just because it just grabs this fucking moment so perfectly.
I'll definitely check that out. I mean, you know the story of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska album, right?
No.
Oh, there's a great book. I just read all about it, but the story is well known besides the book. So Springsteen did, what was it? The River album. And at that time he started playing arenas and stuff, and he was big. He wasn't born in the USA big, but it was very clear.
He was up there. Yeah.
He was just about to be like Elvis
ramping
level.
up, trajectory was high.
Superstardom was next.
Yeah.
And, you know, he did what he always did. He went in a bedroom and he got his acoustic guitar out and he wrote some songs. The difference this time was there was a brand new technology called 4-track recording. So you could just use this new machine. I think TIAC made it. You put a regular cassette in and you could record 4 separate tracks. So yourself playing guitar, yourself playing bass, yourself singing, and then some background vocals. And it's all you. He recorded all the songs that he intended for his next record by himself in the bedroom, and then went into the studio with the band and played this cassette for them. And they tried to do studio versions and they just weren't working. And he got frustrated and he went to management and his record company and said, just put this out. Handed them the cassette. Literally, that's what happened.
The way it is, exactly. This is it.
And
this is
and they freaked out. And if you know his song Atlantic City, that's off of that album.
Yep. Okay, I do know it. Yeah. Yep.
And so that album, still one of my favorite albums of all time. It's just him, made all by himself, and it wasn't a major hit. At the time, it was critically panned. But what followed was the entire, you know, second half of the 80s, indie music, alternative music, and everybody was using 4 tracks to make demos. And then you had lo-fi music, which is kind of what you were talking about, I think. People just making their own music and putting it out without a studio.
Right. Yeah, like, because that is a very, like, that sort of artistic ethos is, it's like I love, like, for instance, I think we've talked about the movie Repo Man.
Oh, yeah.
Like Repo Man, it was big with me back in Looking Glass days. It remains huge to me. Like, this movie is just so, it's so perfect. It's so, and it's so like it's so shitty. It's like so broken and cheap. Yeah. If punk rock were a movie, right? And I was you know, like my kids are not super into movies, but they are, which is weird. They're super into video games. Video games is very, very big, so we communicate that way. But my daughter, it's my youngest daughter. She likes really sort of fun, light, happy, feel good material. Like, that's what she gravitates towards. So she let me know, like, it's from Clueless to, it's just you know, like Barbie, you know, this kind of stuff where it's just like, this is super fun. Like, it's light and it's a good time. And but she heard me talking about Repo Man. I was like, we can watch Repo Man. And I was like, she's gonna fucking hate Repo Man. This is gonna be terrible. She loved Repo Man.
Oh, that's great.
She loved Repo Man. She loved it. And we talk about it all the time. Like, it always comes up, especially the part when Estevez, like, after Harry Dean Stanton has sort of swindled him into stealing this car, and they're back at the repo shop, and he's just realizing that he got scammed and these people are repo men, right? And they're like, you want a beer, kid? And they throw him a beer. And he's standing there looking around, and he cracks open the beer and goes, you people are repo men. Pours the beer out onto the floor in its entirety, and then stands there. Like, she's like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen anyone do.
Oh man, that's so funny.
Like, this is the greatest, absolutely the greatest thing in the world, dude. Like, I talk about give me hope for the future. It's like, as long as this can still happen, then we're in good shape. The Repo Man soundtrack is also one of the greatest soundtrack collections of all time.
For sure.
Like, it's a perfect cross section of so many beautiful types of some things that people know today that are very popular. But at the time, I was just like, when like Pablo Picasso comes on, I was like, "What is this?
Why?
Why is this happening?" Like,
you must know, back when we were hanging out Looking Glass era, I love DVDs, and I had started to collect. I've continued with Blu-ray and now 4K, and the Criterion collection. You know, some people look at it as like, oh, this snooty, like curated collection. Right. It's not that at all. It's not. It's highbrow, it's lowbrow, it's just movie lovers. Mm-hmm. And they did an edition of Repo Man, and the packaging, if you haven't seen just the artwork on the box, it's gorgeous. It's like,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, is it the map one? Like the map of Los Angeles?
Yeah,
one?
it's like green and black and white.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. That's beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
I have my copy, my DVD copy is comes in a tin box.
Oh, right.
That is the license plate of the car with the alien on it.
I remember that. I remember those were, so they have new ones called steel books that like are very nice. They open nicely, but those ones, those tin boxes, you would like have to take the entire cover off, set it aside. Yes. I had a 1933 King Kong tin that I actually wound up losing everything inside. Who knows what happened, but I kept the tin, and it's like where I keep guitar picks and things like that. Fun.
That's even cooler. Like, that's way cooler. You don't need the DVD. Like, all that stuff is forever on. That's on Criterion all the time. You don't need that. But it's a King Kong place for your guitar picks. That's fucking cool.
It's double nerding, combining interests.
It's double nerding. It's a nerd multiplier. So can you tell me, and not to keep talking about movies, but I am interested in, like, what is your experience of sharing movies with your daughter? Do you like, is that like a process, like sharing art, like, and sort of like getting a very specific selection together, or do you, like, how do you approach that?
So I have twins. I have a boy and a girl, Max and Maya, and I have very different experiences engaging with creative stuff with both of them. Max and I have extremely similar tastes. When it comes to music, we're almost perfectly aligned. So we've been to a million concerts together, and we've just had these great experiences. And because my daughter's tastes are somewhat different, we haven't had that many. We've had a few for sure. Recently, we bonded over Phoebe Bridgers. I even met her in Maine last year, but that's another story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another story. So this upcoming movie watching binge that we're about to do over the next few weeks, she's just like, she's kind of paying a debt in a way. She's like, yeah, I said I would do it, so I'll do it. And it's not that she doesn't care what we watch. For example, I said, oh, I thought of One of the Nine. And she's like, oh boy, what's it going to be? And I was like, I'm going to make you watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Ah, nice. There you go.
She loves Barbie. She's seen Barbie twice. And I'm thinking,
oh, it's a Margot Robbie experience, man.
Margot Robbie's great. That. I love Babylon, but I'm not going to watch that with my 20-year-old daughter. It's a little much.
I just saw Babylon for the first time.
Did you enjoy it?
That's a good conversation. I ultimately, yes, I loved it. Yeah. But you're right. That movie is a crazy ride. It's a crazy ride.
I just have to say, I'll watch the scene with Brad Pitt on the balcony. I'll just watch that.
Oh my God.
For a week straight.
Dude, like we watched it for a recent recording of Martini Giant that's not out yet.
Oh, cool.
And it's and like I think we spend at least 6% of that podcast's time doing imitations of what's his name, Tobey Maguire. like he'll do anything for money. I was like, oh my God. Right? Yeah, I watched that with Anne, and she was like, she watched the whole thing. She's like, okay.
Right? That experience of watching a movie with someone you know really well, and at the end you're like, and they're like,
what do you think? Nah. Well, and she knows me, so like halfway through she's like, you're loving this. And I'm like, yes, tears in my eyes.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. You're the great crier with movies.
I am the most dedicated crier. I guaranteed cry anytime. But it's a Jim Carrey movie. It's crime.
Right?
We're getting that out of the way
Well,
early.
I envy that. Somehow in my elder years, I don't cry much. The weirdest things will make me cry. I don't, because of how I watch TV and movies, streaming and on disc and all that. I don't see commercials that often, but every once in a while I'll be in a hotel or visiting family, whatever it is, and I'll see a commercial. If it's early in the morning,
it just gets you.
Yeah, and I'll be like sobbing over like, there's some little kid who got a Band-Aid on his knee. What?
Oh, he got a Band-Aid. Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous, dude. Like, because you're not prepared for it at all. It's just like, look at this kind little moment with a child, Fred.
Yeah.
Stop it!
Ah! My kids are grown up. What? No.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Yeah, like I was gonna say with both music and movies is like I get most of my music comes from watching movies. And so the soundtracks like Repo Man soundtrack and stuff like this. And this may also contribute to like why I have a pretty wide range of stuff that I like. And it's not because I'm like pat on the back, sort of open-minded about stuff. It's just that like if it's in a fucking Michael Mann movie, I'm going to love the music.
Oh yeah.
Just because it's plugged in. Like I'm feeling things in association with this thing. Right. And so it's wherever the movie is going to go, I will find myself attached to whatever the music is that got me there, even if it's not my zone of music. Now, but for you, it's just like the direct music experience. Like you don't have another attached art.
Yeah. I often will go for long walks. I had been doing that a little bit before COVID, but a lot during COVID. Pop in the earbuds and just listen to music is a very different experience than the other thing I do on walks, which is listen to podcasts. And there's this sweet spot with music. Like I mentioned, this band White Reaper. The first time I heard the record, when my friend recommended it, I was like, yeah, this sounds pretty cool. Day or two later, I listened to it, and now I'm listening differently. I've already decided I'm interested. I'm no longer like following up a reference from a friend, which is its own thing. Now I'm interested. And then on the second listen, it can go a little higher. And then with this band, it hit me all at once. It was, what is he saying? That sounds like a really interesting lyric. Listen to this lyric. It sounds kind of dumb, but it's the emotion. When my phone rings, can't wait to hear what you'll say. He says that like 10 times in a row. It's nothing crazy, but the inflection and the melody and all that was incredibly emotional, and it hit me at the moment. So it's like this lyric that I'm finding meaning in, the sound of the guitars, the way the thing is produced, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And so that when I get hooked that way, then that's when something really gets in my brain and doesn't let go.
Right. Because there's always like a different layer to experience where like there's, like you can think about it in whatever mood you're in, there's a way into what the song is offering.
Right.
Right.
And I'm always thinking of the how did they make this side? I don't do it consciously. I don't choose to do it. It's just what I'm interested in. And so when I was younger, I would literally turn the music up and up and up until it was so loud. And I loved that feeling of,
sure.
It's like, did you see Oppenheimer in IMAX?
Not in IMAX, but I did see it on a huge screen.
Okay, with great sound.
Like, great sound. Yeah.
So it's probably a similar experience to the IMAX. Like, I cannot imagine going to see that in like an average theater or watching it at home with the volume low. Like,
no, it's an overwhelming experience.
And it's meant to be.
It's designed to be.
Yeah, with these crazy close-ups and atomic explosions. Like, duh.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because it's forcing a connection into your nervous system. Like when you do it this way.
It's a visceral experience, and without that audio element in that way, it's a different experience. Mm-hmm. So for me, when I was younger, music, that was a big part of music. It's no surprise. The music I wound up loving was loud rock because it just lends itself to that feeling. But as I've gotten older, certainly like you're in the car with other people, you're not going to listen that loud. With kids, loud music goes away. But then, my hearing is deteriorated over time. I've got tinnitus that comes and goes in one ear. So now I have to be more careful. So, but that changes how I listen. I listen in a more careful way than just turning it up and being barraged with the music.
Yeah. Right. Right. Well, I think it's also like, because I totally agree with you. If even today, if I'm really into a song, like I will press the cans of my earphones tighter to my ears, so like nothing escapes it. Like it all pours into my nervous system, and like it's part of the. It's not so much self-consciousness. Maybe that's the wrong word, but it's like you want no distractions at all. You want your body to vibrate with it.
Yes.
You want to be the music. You just want to be the music.
Yeah.
And I can, it's like, like I listen to, and this is going to be corny as hell, but, I had not heard the song, what do you call it? Simon and Garfunkel song. One of their most famous ones. What's it
Bridge
called?
Over Troubled Water?
Bridge Over Troubled Water. Thank you. And I hadn't heard that in I'm sure I'd heard it, out in the world.
You never listened to it?
But I hadn't listened to it in, I don't know, like probably 15 years. Right. And I was just like, I was sort of flipping through something. I was like, I should listen to that again. And I started listening to it, and it was just doing something else. And by the end of it, I discovered that I was standing in front of my computer with my hands pressed like this, tears pouring out of my eyes. It's like I was beamed to that moment. Yeah. I don't remember any of the anything that led up to that.
You blacked out.
And I was just like, and I blacked out from like the intensity of the emotion that I was suddenly feeling over it. And I was just like, I was just like, I don't know if I can ever listen to that song again. Like that was just, it was the peak moment of that song in my whole life. And it was just in like this one sweaty little room.
Yeah.
Like this is it.
I completely identify with what you're describing. And I've had it with different things, different mediums throughout my life. When I was young, I was, and I still am, crazy comic book fan. I adore comics and graphic novels as an art form. When I was very young, there was a flea market my parents would go to now and then, and they would drop me off at the comic book stand. This creepy old guy, they'd be like, "Can he stay here?" I'm like 7 years old. They're leaving me there for an hour.
And you're like, "No." Do you see this dude?
Oh no. I was like, go. There are comic books here. I'm good. No awareness that the creepy dude was creepy. Anyway, 5 comic books for $1. Like I was in heaven. But I remember, from that time until I was probably 15 or so, give me a stack of comic books laying in my bed and just reading comics, being completely lost. Maybe not into the euphoria you described, but the best of the best, like the Byrne Claremont X-Men run. Like,
oh yeah, terrific.
And they I could reread them, and I was gone. I didn't exist. I was inside of those stories. And so the connection I'm making, Simon and Garfunkel's best songs, and that may be their very best, they do this magic trick of being otherworldly, that you don't really accept or understand that it was made by people. And I had the same thing with comic books, and I don't have it with movies because I'm an adult, but I think when I was younger, sometimes
right.
But very specifically comic books, I remember the moment I realized, oh no, people just made this. It's not like it doesn't come out of some kind of machine or something. Like I never had a specific thought of how things were made. It was more the realization that it's just people making things.
Yeah, some dude sitting down and drawing this comic. Like he's penciling it out, he's making the thing and doing all the work and sort of screwing this part up and then painting over that and whatever. Like all the normal everyday stuff you do. And it added up to this thing, which seems like it's existed infinitely.
Yeah, and that realization, I think, was the trigger that made me go, well, I want to make things too. And I just started making things, drawing and whatever. I remember when we first started working together at Looking Glass, and you were this incredible artist, but also had a really great command of After Effects at the time. And I had okay Photoshop skills and a little bit of After Effects. I think I knew some 3D. I did know some 3D stuff, and I had an animation background from college. But I remember you showing me little tricks and little things in After Effects. And there was, you probably won't remember because it wasn't a big deal to you like it was to me. We were working on this one shot where I don't know if it was Garrett or another character, is taking a screwdriver and they're just going in and turning the screw. And there's a close up. So, a close up of the screwdriver coming in, and I messed up and it looked like it bounced off the screw and then he tried again, but I left it in.
Oh, right.
It was a happy accident. And I left it in because it looked very realistic. And you were like, you were just like, this is the greatest. That's so cool. How did you think of that? I was like, I didn't.
Dude, because the spline was messed up. Right. I thought of it. Yeah, exactly. Because After Effects can't handle keyframes very well.
Yeah. So anyway,
but that's the important thing, is that you recognized that it was great. Like that's to me that's the artistic moment, right? Like it's not like. It's like if you're, I'm sure if it's true if you're playing music, it's certainly true if you're shooting things and filming things, or animating them. Like if you didn't mean to do it, but you see that it works, like it's the seeing that it works that is the art. Like
absolutely,
that's where you're delivering the goods.
And this is, I've heard you talk about AI, and I don't want to spiral us off into AI because that'll be another month of discussion. But no, I totally agree with you. AI can be another great art tool if we all use it that way and think of it that way. At least
if you own it as a tool. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I teach a bit for RISD continuing education, and my students are often asking about AI and AR, and some of them are very honest. They're like, are we wasting our money going to art school? And I'm like, I want to shake them and be like, no, of course not. You're learning to see. You're learning to figure out your taste. And whatever the tools are always going to change and adapt. It's your taste and your decision making that matters.
Too much technical ability can get in your way of saying something.
Yeah.
Like you have to always be listening to what the voice is saying, not what the tools or the craft is guiding you to do. Like never let the craft guide you ever.
Right.
It can inspire you. And you can refine it so much that you can deliver very, very subtle bits of information and feeling, but that must remain under your control and your ability to recognize the beauty in it. And that's what makes you an artist.
Absolutely. This reminds me of that great quote. It's a longer, probably more than a quote, speech by Ira Glass. So you're familiar with the
This American Life. Yeah.
Your taste catching up with your ability.
Oh, interesting. Go ahead.
I'll do a quick version, but anyone who's interested should absolutely look this up. Ira Glass says it a million times better than I could. But the basic idea is when you're young, some of us have maybe more developed taste than others. Just like Michael Jordan was physically more ready to be a great basketball player. And then he worked his ass off to become great. So anyway, some of us have a little bit more refined taste when we're young. And then what happens is we look around and go, oh, I'm finding the good stuff when other people aren't. And then, like I was saying earlier with me, that becomes, I think I'd like to make some stuff. And you make some stuff and it's crap. It's just garbage.
That's right. That's right.
And some people quit at that point because they're like, oh, well, I guess I'm just not good. The smart people and the successful people keep working until their ability reaches the level of their taste. And that, you see that with great creators of all kinds.
Well, when did you start playing? When did it, when you were getting into music and transitioning into making music?
Yeah,
what was that part of the journey for you?
So when I was 7 or 8 years old, I'll give credit to my parents. They always played music in the house and in the car. Neither of them are musicians. They just loved music. Top 40, the Bee Gees, 70s disco, and I didn't even think about music. And then at some point they decided, my brother, who's 2 years younger, and me, we're going to take music lessons. I don't know why my sister didn't take music lessons. She's 2 years older, but whatever. Right. And so I was handed an acoustic guitar. My brother was sat down at a piano, and we took lessons for 3 months, 4 months. And I was excited to learn to play guitar, and I learned to play and sing Elvis's Love Me Tender. And such a little kid mindset. I love that because I sang it to my mom.
Yeah, nice. Nice. Oh,
and
man,
then
I'm gonna cry, see?
But then I didn't play it well. I just played it.
Oh, sure.
I hated practicing and all that. I found that on the back of the wood acoustic guitar, you could take the hard plastic pick and you could make nice grooves in the wood.
No, look at that.
So I'm like doodling on the back of this guitar.
Right.
My parents saw that, and that was the end of guitar lessons, and I was relieved. And then
right.
when I was 14 or 15 and I started to really get into music, again, U2 was like my first big favorite band. I like grabbed that guitar out of the closet and I tried, and I actually was able to make some sounds. I don't know if it was the small amount of lessons I had. I couldn't then, and I still can't read music. But I liked making sound with this thing, and I found it very easy. I saw a book. Playing chords wasn't so hard. I saved some money. I bought my first electric guitar, and that was it. The sound of an electric guitar was the greatest, and then I just never stopped.
Yeah. I mean, like once you plug into the right expression, the right tool, like it really sings. Like you just even if you're terrible at it, you're like, no, that does it. That does the trick, whatever it is.
Yeah. I wasn't writing music. I was just trying to learn other songs that I liked. And then I started playing music with some friends, and that was really fun. And one of them was trying to be our lead singer, and he was, I'm pretty sure he was tone deaf, really charismatic, like trying to be like a David Lee Roth kind of wild dude.
Right.
But did not have the singing chops. And I didn't know that I could sing, but being a cranky, impatient guy, every time he would mess up, I was playing guitar. I was sort of not highfalutin, but I like the musical leader, only because I was the one learning the guitar part, which is like the main core of the song. And
that's what you're hanging everything on.
Yeah. So, and if there was a mistake or everyone was like, wow, wait, how's it go? I'd be the guy that it goes like this. So this guy would mess up singing, and I would go, no, it doesn't go like that. It goes like this. And I would sing it, and it would be the right note. I was like, oh, maybe I can sing. And so, but I was still embarrassed and shy, didn't want to sing in front of people. So for months, I sang in the car. And then I started recording myself singing at home. And it took a little bit of like confidence building. And then the gates were open, and sang with my friends playing music in the garage. And then, you sing with an acoustic guitar at a party and girls pay attention. Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. Once you learn that one.
That's a good moment. I'm still working that one.
Pardon me, everyone.
I didn't know if you noticed, but I brought my acoustic guitar. It's a Martin.
I saw it strapped to your back, ready to go. We were going to watch this movie, but we can do this.
But did you know I sing and play guitar?
I'm pretty sure you will.
For better or for worse. In high school, I was totally the guy that would show up at a party with my guitar. Absolutely. I was that guy.
Sure, right.
No awareness of like, how's this going to be received? I didn't give a shit. But
awesome.
You get older, and certainly since I moved to Providence, I've got a group of friends that I would never in a million years show up with a guitar unless they invited me over to jam. That's a different thing.
Of course, yeah. Right,
and then I have neighbors who are like more like from like hippie culture and that sort of world. Actually, they lived in San Francisco for a while, and they have these awesome summer backyard barbecue hangouts with friends from around the country, and everyone brings an acoustic guitar.
Absolutely.
They sent me home last time and said, go home and get your guitar. What are you doing?
But yeah, I mean, I think that is the I miss that that communal feeling of that kind of experience. Like when you are in the presence of someone making something like live, like that's a whole different profound connection.
Oh, absolutely. Do you play music at all? Do you play any instruments?
No. I mean, I can sing.
Okay.
And I've sung before. Yeah. But so being a part of that is like, it's a really special feeling. But it's not something I can really tap into very much.
The reason I ask is because there's probably many different flavors of playing music with other people. The two that I've had the most rewarding experiences are, one is just getting in a room with friends. And it works better when it's just a jam session. Generally, 3 people is the perfect number, and no singing, by the way. So you have a drummer, a bass player, and a guitar player, and one person makes a noise of any kind. They could just hit a cymbal or something, and then someone else hears that and does something in reaction. And all of a sudden, you're having this conversation with instruments. That it's a language of sorts. And if it's a good jam session, you can do that for an hour or more without stopping and it's euphoric. It's just, you're lost in this flow state, and it's great.
Right.
The other one that I never knew of, I've played on stage a bunch over the years, but it wasn't until 2017 when I had written all these songs over the years. I finally decided I'm going to form a proper band, and we're going to play shows, and we're going to put out a record and all that. And so from 2017 until the start of the pandemic, I played a ton of shows here in Providence. No delusion of grandeur. Sorry, my dog is experiencing
that's okay.
male people and all that.
That's okay.
We just play local clubs, and mostly it's people in the bands there to watch us. Hey, stop. Sorry. Come on, stop it. So that experience is standing on a stage and performing music that I wrote and, has pretty deep meaning to me, that I'm sharing, even though people may not understand what I'm sharing, some pretty deep emotional stuff that I just needed to process. And that's what these songs are about. And having a reaction from an audience, even if they don't know what it's about, even if they don't like it, just them being there to bounce my stuff off. That's one thing. The greatest though experience was the summer of 2019 here in Providence. They put on this big festival called PVD Fest, and it's outdoors, and there's multiple stages and food trucks and beer and all that. We were invited to play on one of the stages. Somehow we got this perfect time slot. It was, I think, like 8:30 on a Saturday night, right in front of City Hall on a nice size stage. And I thought, okay, all my friends are going to come, and my bandmates' friends will be there. So we'll have 20, 30 people, and whoever's wandering by, it'll be really fun. No joke. There were like 200 something people there, really into it, dancing. And I mean, we play alternative rock music, so dancing is just kind of like, bopping around.
Yeah, just grooving. Yeah, right.
My son was taking photos of that performance. He did some video as well. And it's just like that experience, it wound up being like a cap to the whole band thing, because then COVID was not long after. But yeah, I've never felt anything like that since.
Yeah. Well, because I think that what's really, because when you said, it's like when you brought up the lyrics before, where I can't wait for you to call, right? Like these, like if you just saw the text of that, you'd be like, this is not exactly the most powerful statement I've ever seen, right? But the emotion that's baked into it from the performance, not only it not only conveys the emotion through the music, it actually makes you think harder about what these words mean to you, right? And it changes in your mind as you experience it. And so like people don't have to know what, like specifically what you're talking about, because they will know what they are talking about when they think about it. Like, and that's what it's sort of like, all, I think that all movies and all music do this. It's just like, I don't know whatever the performer intended with any of this, but I can tell you what it's unlocking in me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that is all that matters, is our experience of whatever art we're appreciating. Mm-hmm. The artist's intention.
That's it.
I said I have notes, like I was going to tell these stories about meeting Eddie Vedder and stuff. And like when I met him, I would have loved to talk very specifically about one song and talk about those lyrics. I didn't think of that in the moment. I was just like, holy shit, I'm meeting this guy that I have so much respect for.
Exactly. It's Eddie Vedder. Holy shit. Yeah, exactly.
And I had a great experience meeting him and all that. And I'm kind of glad I didn't do the thing that if I had time to prepare, I would have done, which would be, in this song release, you're talking about your dad. And listen, I also had issues with my dad, and they're similar. And like, what were you thinking? What led you to these lyrics? I don't want to know. I want to keep my experience with that song, because it's
what happened for me is what happened for me. Yeah, exactly. That's the beauty that you're finding, is what's in here, what's happening for you, And I think you're totally right, because it's the like, I guarantee you, like what prompted him to write it, and to do it is likely similar. Like with the emotions that you're receiving are likely the emotions that he is receiving when he is playing it.
Right.
Like that's probably true. That's because humans are very much alike in how they process emotions.
Right.
You know? Like we are people. We share these things. But even if he's just like, bro, I just wrote that to make money. I hate that song. You know,
that would be the worst thing ever. I would, right?
Right. You know, you'd be like, well, like I would, if that were the case, I'd be like, Eddie, you're missing out. That thing makes me cry every time. Yeah. You know, and he'd be like, well, it makes me money every time, so I'm fine with it. You know, like,
money, tears, it's all the same.
It's all the same, boy. Yeah, but like that's the deal. Is like there is a like you bring up like artist intent. Like I feel like I can normally assume that the intent is roughly what I'm receiving, but ultimately it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah,
like it is what I'm like. This thing. This is a mechanism. Whatever the song or the movie it is gives me the tools to examine something within myself, or to plug into an emotion that is within me. That's all it needs to be ever. Like I would love to, I can share that with anyone and they may be having similar feelings, but it is the feeling of it that makes all the difference in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. In my own little world of writing songs and playing shows, and again, it's usually friends of friends that come out. I've had a couple of people come up and say they like this song or they like that song. And I've tried to be really careful about saying thank you and, oh, what did you think when you heard that? And never share. I mean, if they ask, I would share, but that hasn't happened, and just more be appreciative of their appreciation.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Exactly. Like I'm glad you had an experience. Like that's what I would want for anybody.
Yeah,
like 100%. You know, it's like I always think, you know, I'm not the world's biggest Lord of the Rings nerd, but like I know that J.R.R. Tolkien was like, people are like, so this really has to do with your experiences in World War One. You know, and like the Sam Frodo relationship is obviously like a, you know, this kind of soldier with his assistant and all this kind of stuff, and he's like, absolutely not. That has nothing to do with it. Like that didn't inform it at all. And so I heard that, I was just like, well, he is kidding himself.
Yeah, right. He doesn't even know his own work.
Exactly. Like you can say that, John, but really, you know. And so like, yeah, it's totally possible for people to not fully understand something that they've created, because it's always it's a feeling. It's an ephemeral feeling, and like you may not even know what is motivating that, you know, and trying to find a way to like bring it back down into reality at all, like through music or whatever. You know, like that artistic process, it may not give you any particular clarity as to why you're feeling it, but being able to encode it is the important part.
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, that reminds me of, I think a lot of people write, at least rock musicians write this way. My process, it's never exactly the same, but it's always a version of this. I'm playing guitar or maybe a little keyboard, whatever I'm playing, and something I did sounds novel to me. So I do it more.
Right.
And then that becomes like, oh, this is the germ of a song. And that's when I actually sit down to work. It's like, all right, well, what's another part I could put with this? And it's just music at that point. When I get like two parts that I feel good about that sound like they're going somewhere, it's at that point that I want some kind of lyric or some kind of melody. But I do this thing that there's that great documentary of the making of The Unforgettable Fire, the U2 record, like Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois. And they're lovingly making fun of Bono, and they talk about him using bongolese, which is he's just making noise with his mouth, and maybe there's melody, there's almost never words. He's just going whatever. It sounds like some made up language. And I do something very similar, but what happens with me is within 2 or 3 repetitions, there's a word, like one of those fakey sounds is sounding like a word. And I accept that. I embrace it. I'm like, all right, well, that's the word that I don't believe in, like the universe pushing me or any of that stuff. I just believe in art. And so like, okay, the word is, I have this song I'm very proud of called Dreaming. The word is, it was actually a phrase, I've been dreaming. Okay, what is I've been dreaming. And then it was, I've been dreaming along these lines. So I had that line, and then I do more like just vocalizations to figure out what the next lyric is. And so it was, I've been dreaming along these lines. Nothing I had was really mine. Like, oh my God, I don't know exactly what it means, but it means something.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, I could not get up for an hour until I wrote the whole song.
Yeah, that's it, dude. That's it. Yeah, because like it's that discovery that leads you down the path. Because like it's like there are these parts of ourselves that or whatever, it's unilluminated, and then you figure out the one little, you go like bing, you turn on a light here and you can kind of see something over here, and it leads you over here, and it starts to expand into an entire like emotional map.
It's like that underground hallway in Barbarian, and then you meet the mother and
get me out of here. Exactly. But like that's actually a perfect analogy for like practicing art sometimes,
right?
But like that's the thing, is like I think that people, and they agree with this or not, but it's just like I think that people will have an idea, and to relate it back to the John Byrne comic, it's like that these things are sort of fully formed, like when they just come into being perfectly, and the person who created it just sort of snapped their fingers and fully understands the piece,
right?
Just like blah, and like you're just wandering in the mines.
Those guys had no idea that series was the dregs. It was on the verge of cancellation. Their entire run, by the way. It wasn't until after that
and it's the best X-Men
ever by far. Nothing's come close.
Yeah. Like that's the most emotional, the most like intense.
Oh yeah. And it was
absolutely
before,
out of this world.
It was before every superhero had their death of moment. It was original ideas.
Yeah, all that incredible. I just like I don't know what it must have been like for them, but I know when I was first reading that stuff, like it was supernaturally exciting.
Oh yeah.
It's just extraordinary.
And I just would reread it over and over and over to try to understand it. And so, you brought up the people just made this idea. I think that feeling is still with me 50 years later. And I cannot get enough of sitting right here on my table, just came in the mail the other day, is the art of Ryan Ottley. Ryan is a comic book artist. Most recently did the Hulk. He like revamped the Hulk. He's done cool. Spider-Man. He did that comic Invincible.
Oh, yeah. No, Invincible's very good. Yeah, it's excellent.
He's the artist on that. So here's a sketchbook of his that he published. Like, I am still endlessly fascinated by the creative process. I'll listen to any commentary track from a movie, whether I like the movie or not. I just want to hear the people. Yeah. It's why I love listening to your Martini Giant podcast, because I'm not kissing your ass here. It's true. You guys are close enough to filmmaking from your professional experiences that you understand all the process, but you each have a unique take on what you like, why you might like it, why you don't like it. But you also understand that the creators all were really trying. It was never like,
without a doubt.
They just happen to land there,
Right. Yeah. And you deal with people. I mean, it's like, you work with some people that are, incredibly meticulous, incredibly detailed in their process and all this kind of stuff. And you work with other people that are just like, I don't know, you guys figure that out. And they just sort of fuck off and go drinking. And you're just like, we're all in this, man. We're all just making things.
Right.
Someone will think it's cool, or we'll run out of time, or whatever it is. Like, that's how this stuff gets made, and like, it's like I talk about, like, I heard before I worked on his movies that David Fincher was like a real jerk, like a terrible, horrible, mean person to work for, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sure that some people I'm sure that experience was honest for some people. But like for me, this dude was just a pro who knew what he wanted. Like, he wasn't a dick about it. He was just like a hardworking guy, knew exactly what he was trying to make, and he was like constantly thinking it through, and like he wanted to work with people who were sort of similar minded about it. For me, what was reasonable for me and seemed like a great artistic process for somebody else was like, this is completely fucking unreasonable, and it's driving me to drink to work with this guy. Like, these are two perfectly valid points of view.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
But but it's the when you're making any piece of art, even alone, but certainly when you're making with other people, like, it's it's kind of a free for all, like everybody's got to be like, everyone's got to trust in everybody to an extent. And most of the time you're kind of fucking it up and going like, and you put it, you're like, done, good. And then the audience is like, yeah. And you're like, oh, good.
But see,
God,
I think you maybe even glossed over, but like that moment that you just, that is, you turn it in or whatever. I talk to my students about this constantly, that critique and feedback is the most valuable. And if you don't crave it as a creative person, whether you're working alone or on a team, if you don't crave that feedback, other people telling you when it's done or it could be better or whatever, you're going to have a really hard time if you're only looking inward.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I feel, I talk about this with my kids as well. It's like I believe, for instance, and a lot of people don't, but I believe in testing films with test audiences, right? And the reason why I believe in it is not because you should listen to the test audience and do what they want, right? Like, oh, I didn't like the sad ending, and then they change it into a happy ending.
No, that's not terrible. What they're for.
That's not what they're for. Like, you should go in there and say, like, okay, honestly, I don't give a shit whether you like this. I just need to know if what I am trying to do is happening.
You want to see how they react, and if that's the reaction you are going for.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yep.
Studio
execs are
the opposite.
Well,
like they're just like,
well, where we are with film, like, so we're talking about X-Men, and we're two superhero nerds. Like, I loved the blossoming of superheroes in the late 90s, early 2000s, those first couple X-Men and Spider-Man. And man, I've had so much fun. I would say even up through Endgame, I was still enjoying the ride. It was great to see these things that my 12-year-old brain wanted. Nearly perfected. You had the Nolan Batman movies and all that stuff. But then after Endgame, I got to grow tired to the point now where I'm not seeing some of the movies. I'm not even seeing them. And so my hope is that we are now at one of those points like the early 90s with what is it called, the Soderbergh and Tarantino.
The indie revolution in the 90s. Yeah,
exactly
right.
I hope we're getting to another point where and of course it's always money that drives this nonsense, but like execs are basically going, okay, time's up on superhero movies, no more of that. And now we have Oppenheimer, and to a degree Barbie. Barbie is weird because it is an IP, but it is a subversive film using IP.
It was clearly made by an artist, right? It's very much made by an artist.
To be fair, I haven't seen it, but from hearing people who have seen it and just the trailers, I get what they're going for, and I want to see it. I just haven't been.
I recommend Barbie. I think like it has all the flaws with Barbie are because it is a Mattel product, and it's basically a giant advertisement that keeps them from saying clearer, harder core versions of the statements that they're going for. And I wish that they could do that, but that's not the assignment. Like clearly, Gosling and Gerwig and Margot Robbie, like they have a vision and they deliver it as clearly and as forcefully and as beautifully and as hilariously as they possibly can. And then there's some sort of like, well, this is a Barbie advertisement, so we got to hedge some.
You're
of these
never
bets.
going to get away from that.
You're never going to get away from that. So if you go with with that in mind, like you will find huge joy in Barbie, and certainly the overall statement is incredibly powerful and works very, very well. But that's the thing is like they're going to learn the wrong lesson from that success.
Right, they're not going
to studios.
They're not going to go towards taking more chances. They're going to look at Oppenheimer and say, well, okay, you get the right director, the handsome lead, and a historical story, and there's your formula. They're going to look at Barbie probably just like they look at superhero movies. Maybe
it's a toy. We're selling a toy,
right. But maybe you get an indie writer and director team, and you can do something that's a little more successful than Black Adam or whatever junk superhero failed.
Right. Well, it's like Scorsese would talk about that, and there's a great long documentary that he made called Martin Scorsese: A Personal Journey Through the Movies.
Oh, I know it well.
It's hours long.
Yes. And
it's this thing that I go back to from time to time to see how many movies from it I have seen now, because there's still things in there that I'm like, I've not seen that one. I got to catch up with this one. But he spends a lot of time on the concept of smuggling ideas and smuggling intent into pop stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, you're making a genre piece. Yeah, you're making a movie for a big corporation, whatever it is. Do your best. Like, it's your responsibility as an artist to secretly make the thing you want to make and to say the thing you want to say. And if you've done it right, then people will come out of there going, that was sort of weird how this blah, blah, blah happened, or what they said about this. Because that's what you actually, like, the rest of it was just packaging, but here's the idea secretly buried inside the thing. And I think that if you can at least create that in, like, that as a mechanism for popular creators, and pointed out that that's what Greta Gerwig is doing in Barbie, then even though they're going to look at it and say, like, well, it looks like we should make giant movies out of all of our toy products. Like, I hope that the people that they get go, that means more opportunities for artists to say serious things. Even if it's folded up inside nonsense, we can still deliver the goods, you know. But like, to your point, like, it is the moment, I think, in like the late 60s when the studios totally fell apart.
Yeah.
You know, like, their Doris Day musicals weren't making any money anymore, and no one wanted to see any more squeaky clean white hat westerns. And then Easy Rider hits.
Right.
Super cheap movie, and it makes millions and millions and millions of dollars everywhere. Like, when you can convince the suits that the only way they're going to make money is by laying bets on artists, then you're home free.
Right. And then you have, from that, you get, we could talk about a ton of movies, but the things that jump out to me, which then lead to another kind of revolution, is American Graffiti and Jaws, you know, and then that leads to the era of the blockbuster, which I think the late 70s, early 80s is probably my favorite era, because you had art, blockbuster as art, and vice versa, you know? Yeah,
absolutely true.
Those films,
like some of the greatest entertainment films of all time that have real things to think about in them.
Absolutely.
You know, and I feel like, cause I watched like one of the favorite family films here is Poltergeist. And I could watch Poltergeist like 1 billion times.
God,
it's a hugely entertaining movie. It's great. But when now, from a distance, I'm like, this is also one of the greatest movies about family dynamics I've ever seen. It's one of the greatest movies about, like, you know, weighing, you know, where you are at in your professional life versus what your beliefs are.
Yeah.
Like, all this stuff is, like, just in the background of that movie.
There are those 3 films that Spielberg, and I'm one of the people that believes Spielberg really did direct Poltergeist, that Hooper was marginally involved, just because of all of the trademarks that. So you have Close Encounters, you have Poltergeist, and then you have E.T. Those 3 movies to me they're just of a piece. They go together. Perfect triple feature. All of the family dynamics, I love Spielberg's talking over one another thing. Oh yeah. No one does it as well as
it's
him.
Incredible.
Funny.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Total sidetrack, but I just watched Jaws 2 for the first time since I'm like, whatever, 12.
Sure.
Not a great movie. I give them credit though, because they tried that specific thing, the characters talking over one another, and it's so ham-fisted. It's just it falls flat. It doesn't work.
It just doesn't work. Yeah, it just doesn't work. Yeah, like, it really takes an enormous amount of skill to pull that off. That's why nobody does it anymore. Right. Like, because it's too, when you get it wrong, it's like easily the most. It's like you can't fix it. Like, if you do it wrong, you can't fix it. That's the problem. And studios would prefer nice, clean, editable lines.
Right.
You know?
I feel like Soderbergh could pull that off, and maybe has.
Sure.
But I can't give you an example. It's just a feeling.
Yeah, he's definitely Soderbergh. Soderbergh is an absolute hero of mine, and like, I love that he just like drops a whole 6-hour movie on HBO, and like he's like, oh, and I also made this other movie that you can rent on my site, and I'm just like, oh, and here's a High Flying Bird for Netflix. I just didn't tell anybody I made it. Here it is, and you're just like, what are you doing? How has this happened?
Do you listen to the Smart List podcast?
Oh, I hear that's great. It's with what's his name from Ozark?
So Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean. He was from a 90s TV.
Will and Grace.
Yes, Will and Grace. Sean something.
Yeah, he's terrific.
They're hysterical. They're great hosts. Their banter is fantastic. But the reason I bring it up is Soderbergh was on a very recent episode, and I think you would love it. He talks about everything you just said about loving him, and he doesn't do it in a way where he's like, revealing the secrets. He's basically saying what we've been saying. He's like, I just like making shit. So I make as much as I can, and I leave how
Get it out
goes,
there,
where it goes to everyone else. I just make stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. He's in his 60s now, something like that.
Yeah.
And he's not only the same as he was. Like, I think he's a better filmmaker who is less concerned with hits. Like, he's just like, I don't know. I've been in the business. I have access to fucking everybody. I'm just like, just going to go and make stuff.
Yeah. I'm just going to enjoy the ride.
And he's retained that. Yeah, exactly. He's retained it's like in Zen when you say what is the student's mind or the novice's mind. Like, he is the best example of that in Hollywood. He's like, we are lucky to be doing this. Let's fuck around, like, immediately.
Yeah.
And put it together and put it out and see what happens.
I get a little bit of that. Just a little bit of it from Tarantino, but the overwhelming thing with Tarantino is like, okay, I'm a genius. You don't have to agree with me. I'm a genius, but my excitement level for making movies, his thing of the whole crew yelling, "We love making movies" and all that stuff.
Right.
Actually, I know some people don't like him, but for me, it makes him palatable. His excitement.
Absolutely. He's being completely honest about what he loves.
Right.
That's what makes it work.
Right.
Yeah. Like, it might be, I've never met the guy. I don't know, it might be hard to be in a room with him for more than like a half an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Who knows?
No.
But like, certainly, like, the attitude he has towards what he does is absolutely the healthiest relationship to art that I could describe. Like, this is joy. Let's do this.
The amount of work he puts in, and it's very clear he's not just saying it to seem cool or something. He's putting out books now. His cinema.
I've read both of his books.
Yeah. I haven't read the
Cinema Speculation and Once Upon a Time.
I haven't read Once Upon a Time. That's on my reading list for this vacation coming up. But Cinema Speculation I read in like 2 days. And then
it's great.
His podcast, based on the video store that he worked at.
Oh, that's right. I haven't heard this yet. But tell me, Dan, it's fantastic.
It is incredible. So it's him and Roger Avery, his producer on many of his films, also a filmmaker in his own right. And then Roger's daughter I think she's like mostly the business of the podcast, but she also joins in the discussion now and then, and she's younger.
Oh, that's great.
But she's like a film addict like they are. They watch everything either on film or VHS. And I mean, they've turned me on to some, I'll just say, terrible films that I didn't enjoy. But hearing them talk about them made it fun to watch the movies.
It's fun, exactly. Yeah. It's I watched all the movies that are listed in Cinema Speculation. A bunch of them I had not seen, and like I'd see the title of the chapter and I'd go watch the movie and then I'd read the chapter.
Yeah.
And at least once I'd watch the movie and I'm like, this movie's fucking awful, and then I'd read the chapter. He's like, this is a shitty movie.
Yeah, right. But here's why I'm talking about it. And you learn this whole history, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's called Video Archives, the podcast.
Video Archives.
Yeah. And
Archives.
If you like Cinema Speculation, it is like 20 hours of that.
Oh my God, yeah, I'll totally eat that. Like, I still talk about, like, one of my favorite gags in Cinema Speculation is when he talks about, I think it's Steve McQueen was auditioning women to play opposite him in The Getaway, and it was like Genevieve Bujold or someone like this he's going to meet with her, and she shows up with Maximilian Schell, and he's like, oh, it's nice to meet you, Genevieve. Listen, Max, can I just talk to you outside for a second? And they go outside, and he beats the shit out of Maximilian Schell. Because Maximilian Schell had sex with his wife. He's like, and you don't get the job.
Guess what?
That was hysterical. But like, it's all like good, saucy Hollywood nonsense like that. It's just like such a pleasure to read that stuff. Right, it's like such a big soap opera.
Yeah, and it's all that knowledge and research that he's got that if you don't have that, you couldn't make a film like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, absolutely true. Absolutely true. Yeah, no, I think that guy is like, I don't feel bad for him. He's a billionaire, but like it's too bad that the fanatics about Tarantino, like the super fans, generally are like, oh, I love all the swearing and the violence, right? And they say that so often and so loud that it turns people off who would read more deeply into Tarantino's movies.
Yes.
Like people who would actually enjoy his movies in a much, much more thorough way, in a real filmic way. Like go like, oh, I can't take this kind of language and the violence and these assholes that are just acting this way. I can't do it. And then they just blow them off as like a crappy genre filmmaker.
Right.
Whereas like, I'm sure you've heard me on Martini Giant if you listen to it, like me going off on like Inglourious Bastards. I'm like, there's stuff in this movie that nobody has talked about yet.
Right.
And they've not talked about it because they just want to dismiss him as a shallow noisemaker.
Right.
And I'm like, there's real material in here that's worth thinking about.
Oh yeah,
like,
absolutely. There's so much. There's what's her name that plays the theater owner, and then there's the Bear Jew, which by the way was supposed to be played by Adam Sandler. That would have been crazy.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know. I actually have like, I've been waiting to do this bit. So I really love what's his name, the director who
Eli Roth
took the role. Eli Roth.
Yeah.
Like Sandler would have been great.
Yeah. Because
I actually think Sandler's a terrific actor.
Oh, Uncut Gems.
But what's no, he's incredible. And anything but the Safdies. I love the Safdies.
Yeah.
But what's brilliant in that scene by casting Roth is that Roth is a little too excited. Like,
yes,
he is enraged.
Yes.
While making these jokes.
Yep.
It's like, Teddy, fucking wow, and he's really screaming it. Like, it changes the tenor of the scene. If it had simply been funny, then it wouldn't have the really unpleasant edge that it does.
Oh yeah.
And it's really a visionary bit of casting by Tarantino.
I completely agree, and you're making me realize that as a Jewish person, I never saw Eli Roth's performance as funny. It was cathartic for me. Like, I was so happy to see that happen. And I'm sure people that aren't Jewish have the same reaction. I mean, if you don't hate Nazis, bye.
Exactly.
Welcome to the future. Right. But if it was Sandler, I probably would have been looking for the funny.
Yeah, the funny. It would have been more. That would have been more like, oh my god, he's really gonna crack that dude on the head.
Yeah,
this is gonna be good. Instead, you're like, this is a very strange scene. Like, this guy
he's
is
creepy. Eli
beyond.
Roth.
Yeah, he is so angry that he is frightening.
Yes,
in that moment, and it's totally appropriate. Like,
right.
It absolutely, he's delivering like very honest feeling, and by really showing that on film, it validates all the jokes that you're making about, like Hitler in that movie is like this sort of sad, whiny, pathetic yo-yo. Right. And like that, this moment with Roth makes you like, the movie's going, you do have to remember that this isn't fucking jokes. Like there's lots of jokes in this movie, but this isn't a joke.
Right.
And it's because his eyes are like glassy with rage in that scene. Completely. And I think that and it's just like, I think Eli Roth is an interesting, he's one of these guys where I'm like, I don't think he's that great a director, but he's a really interesting person. He's a really interesting person.
His history of horror series is excellent.
Oh, it's terrific. Yeah. And he's a huge as big a movie lover as Tarantino is.
Oh yeah, completely. But he leans more into the horror stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And the same is true with, they're friends with Rodriguez as well.
Right.
And that's another guy where it's just like, his skills are like, more, like he's made a couple of really great movies.
Sure.
But he's not, he doesn't have the quite the level of craft that Tarantino has.
I think Rodriguez early on got frustrated with the business and went, you know what?
Yes.
I'm just going to do my own thing and make some money and make a living. And he did all the kid movies, the Spy Kids.
He does the Spy Kid stuff.
And those are fun. I watched those with my kids when they were young.
He makes joyful movies.
Absolutely right.
And that's there are people that make movies better than him that I don't like as much as his work.
Sure.
Where I'm just like, this guy, when he I loved Alita. Thought that it's just like, this is a terrific movie. Like, it's big and ridiculous and over. It's like, it's a very melodramatic, semi-silly movie, but holy shit, does he want to be making this? Like, he wants to be there making this movie.
Right. He's putting everything
absolutely
he has
convinced.
Into it.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And that's what sells it, man. That is your ultimate obligation to yourself as a creator.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you feel this way about playing. It's just it's about connecting in here and delivering it out there.
Yeah. And it starts like when I was talking about writing, it starts in that process of, I don't write songs because I have to. I don't have a record deal. I don't have a deadline. I write songs because I want to get some emotion out. I really want to process an emotion. And for me, songwriting has been a great artful way to process things. And then the next step is recording them. And that's a whole other creative process. And then playing them live is sort of the end of the chain. Now I'm sharing them, music is, I think, the only live art form. Well, plays, that's a similar thing.
But plays are like real good plays are pretty rare these days. Like that's
for sure.
Sadly sort of a diminished art form.
Here we go. We're all over the place. I can't let that go without a recommendation. So
go for it, please.
Jaws lovers, right? Of course, both of us. Do you know about The Shark is Broken?
Someone just told me about. What is this? Is it great?
The Shark is Broken. Is a play. Wait. Co-written and starring Ian Shaw, Robert Shaw's youngest son of 8 kids.
Oh my God! Really?
Ian Shaw looks exactly like his dad. And then you put the hat and the jacket and the mustache and the chops,
and it's Quint.
It's Quint. It is. There's no question, right? So you have this play. The premise is, what The Shark is Broken means. Fucking shark was always broke when they were filming. The set is the Orca. It's a cutaway that like the ship's cut in half, and it's the 3 principal actors: Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss on the set, waiting for the shark to get fixed, and the 3 of them interacting. So they're reading the paper, they're kibitzing. Dreyfuss is nervous. One day he's like, "I'm going to be a star." The next day he's like, "I'm terrible in this." And Robert Shaw is, pontificating and drinking and
drinking and drinking and drinking.
Roy Scheider is kind of caught in the middle. Anyway, I just saw it this last Saturday. Drove all the way to Manhattan just to see the play, and then drove back home.
Oh my God!
To Providence.
Oh my God! That sounds amazing.
It was
that sounds
incredible. so good.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Yeah, Ian Shaw's great, and you totally believe him as his dad. But the guy that plays Richard Dreyfuss, it's like this magic trick of within 3 minutes, I thought I was just watching Richard Dreyfuss for an hour and a half. He was that good, and it was hysterical.
What's the oh my God, what's the line that I always say from Jaws with this is not a recognizable line unless you watch Jaws a million times. But when Quint is handing out the homemade alcohol, like the homemade vodka, and he sort of forces Scheider to drink it to see if he's man enough to stand up against Robert Shaw. But you just see it's the look on Dreyfuss's face, like I want to prove myself too, right? Yeah. And Scheider just goes by and goes, "Don't drink that." Don't drink that. Like the power dynamic between the 3 of them in that little sequence is one of my favorite things in the world.
You have to see this.
You can see Dreyfuss is like, "Oh, here it is. Here's my chance. I can prove it to this guy."
Yeah. That dynamic is like the heart of this play. It's all about,
oh my God,
how they interact with each other. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah, because Shaw himself, Robert Shaw was massive alcoholic, obviously. He was also a playwright.
Yep.
And all sorts of other stuff. He's a absolutely sort of fascinating car crash of a person.
Yep.
But there's so much to dig into with that dude. I would love to see any aspect of his life outside of his iconic movies should be a movie in itself.
Oh yeah,
so
for
if
sure.
this is along those lines, I'm completely on board with that.
Yeah.
Because he was being flown away. He had tax problems during Jaws or something like this, and they had to fly him out of the country every time the IRS showed up.
And a visa, he had an impending visa, so he had to finish whatever, he had a dedeadline to finish shooting. That comes up in the play as well. I don't want to forget when you were talking about Tarantino and how he's often perceived, I don't want to say incorrectly, but maybe strangely by fanboys, that are rah-rah violence and all that. The same thing happened with Fight Club. I think to this day, that movie is largely misunderstood.
Yeah, it's an anti-toxic masculinity movie.
Absolutely.
And it's very explicit about this.
Right. And the interpretation has been, you know what the interpretation has been, people actually doing fight clubs and, you know, Brad Pitt is a god.
That's one of the biggest, I mean, like, it's so frustrating that, like, it's frustrating on sort of both ends of the spectrum because, like, first of all, like, people not listening to the movie and then going out and being idiots is frustrating, right? And on the opposite end, you have people that say you shouldn't make movies like this because of people like that. And I'm like, well, you have to be able to make movies like this. Like, you can't not say things that are important to say because a bunch of knuckleheads are going to interpret it however they want to. And it's like Clockwork Orange suffered the same kind of problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, and, you know, like Kubrick yanked it from British theaters because people were committing crimes dressed up in Alex's gear and stuff like this. And, like, I hate that, especially now, I feel like we're caught between those forces. You know, it's like where people are no longer watching the movie for any given movie for the movie. They're watching it because they have something that they want to say, and this is a convenient platform for them to say whatever it is they want.
This is like I forget who was saying it, but some creative, I think it was a Hollywood person, was talking about the difference between it was Robert Downey Jr. The difference between content and basically art. You know, and someone ran down his film list. Which one does he think is content and which is art? And it was really interesting. Like, he thought Iron Man was valid as art, but Iron Man 3, I think it was absolutely content. And I really enjoyed that idea because I think it's part of what we were talking about earlier with, like, maybe we're at the end of the superhero film era, you know, and it's so much of it is just content. I saw the Flash movie because I was curious about Michael Keaton, and there's no doubt that is a movie that is content. It is moments of, this is what the audience wants. It's fan service. And we've delivered that, and therefore we will make money. Guess what? That formula is not working anymore.
Yeah, because it isn't like there's what we as fans think we want is not actually what we need sometimes. You know,
I would say it's almost never what we need.
Right, exactly. You know, like you ask a Star Wars fan before they made Empire Strikes Back, how about, hey, Star Wars fan, you really love Luke Skywalker and the adventures of Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. We were thinking of telling a story where he sits in a bog for 2 hours, complains the entire time, and then fucks up a lightsaber fight with his dad and loses.
And hangs out with an
Does
elderly
that sound
Muppet.
good? Yeah, exactly. Does that sound exciting to you?
Right. Well, that's the thing. You know, we were talking about, I'll bring it back to music. We were talking about U2. They're a great example of, they did Boy, which you mentioned, and then they did their album October, and then they did War. Those 3 records are basically the same band making the same kind of music. It gets slightly more refined, but it's the same thing. Then they are really smart, and they said, shit, if we keep doing this, where do we go? Like, we want to be innovative and creative and have new ideas because it's fun for us, not because of what the audience wants or needs. And so they team up with Brian Eno, you know, who had at that point worked with Talking Heads and other people, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, it's one of the greats of all time.
Yeah, and this guy, Daniel Lanois, who I think no one had ever heard of at that point. And they essentially became part of U2, and they made this experimental art record called The Unforgettable Fire. And so, then they do that. Then they do The Joshua Tree, which is a pop version of that sound. Yeah. And then a few years later, they do Octung Baby, which throws away everything. And they did that over their career. They kept reinventing themselves. And never once did they think about, well, what do the fans want?
Yeah. You can't do it, man. You can't do it. Like, cause like it's you're there. The relationship with the fans is to deliver what's inside you to them, and they share it. Like, this is that's what you're doing. Like, that's what I'm there for as a fan. Right. And it's not to repeat yourself. It's not to say what I want you to say because that's it. Well, this is what's inside me, so I need you to say that. Yeah. Like, that's not going to, then that means that you should become an artist yourself.
Exactly.
Like, like that, if you got something in here that you need to get out, it's time to break out the art tools, but if you're there to receive art from someone else, then that's when your heart is open and your mind is open, and you let that plug into you, whatever it is. I know you didn't ask for Empire Strikes Back, but look, lo and behold, you're crying.
When there's a new...
That's the value.
Yeah, exactly. When there's a new Fincher or Tarantino movie or Soderbergh movie, all these guys were talking about, I'm not excited about getting Once Upon a Time in Hollywood Part 2 or Sex, Lies, and Videotape 2. I know I'm not getting that. And I also know I don't know what I'm getting, even if I've seen trailers. All I know is I trust those creators to deliver something really interesting. That's it.
Yeah. I want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
And with Tarantino, with Once Upon a Time, and you won't believe that the book, here's what I suggest. The book is incredible, right? But make sure you watch the movie one last time before you read the book.
Oh, does it change it that much?
The book changes everything.
Okay.
Like, your entire perception of the film will be different the next time you watch it.
All right.
And it's unbelievable. And I'll give you one. This isn't a spoiler. In fact, it's helpful to know. Like, the entire ending of the film with the kids and the violence and all, like the entire crazy sequence, only comes up as a sentence about 30 pages into the book.
Oh my God.
And it does not happen in the rest of, and it's never referenced again in the rest of the novel. The entire ending is different, has nothing to do with any of that.
Oh, that's awesome.
It is an entirely different experience, and it will color everything you see in that film for the better.
Yeah.
But you got one last viewing of that movie that you're going to have before you're never seeing that movie.
So what
again.
you're telling me is my 20th viewing will be the last version that I perceive this way.
That's it. You gotta goodbye.
I've had a good time. I've seen it.
Yes, plenty. It's been lovely.
Well, this is funny. So, his whole thing about, well, you don't actually, because you haven't listened to Video Archives. So he talks about when he was young, he would read movie novelizations just as a way to get more movie into his bloodstream. Like, that's all he was thinking. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was young, I wasn't quite as esoteric as he was, but there were certain movies I wasn't allowed to see because I was too young. Alien being one of them.
Oh,
so the great Alan Dean Foster novelization.
Alan Dean Foster's Alien. Yes, absolutely.
I read that before I ever saw the movie, and there's some differences. I read the Empire Strikes Back novelization before I saw the movie. And so I have an affinity for this idea of novelizations are actually kind of cool. And I love that
it's great.
He's doing this different thing with them.
He absolutely agrees with you for sure. And because he uses the media as a mechanism to create something greater, not only for the novel he's writing, but for the movie. Like, each one makes the other a better experience.
Yeah.
And it's really astonishing. And so because I obviously I love Tarantino's movies, but Once Upon a Time is very special because it's one of the two films in his career that I'm very emotional at the end of. The other is Jackie Brown.
Oh yeah.
And the scene in Jackie Brown when Max doesn't have the courage to follow Jackie as she drives away is of the most heartbreakingly bittersweet, incredible moments in all of history.
Yes.
It's just incredible. And the complexity of my feelings at the end of Hollywood, where, Sharon Tate shows up and she's sort of Leo is allowed to ascend into heaven, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. Into the next level up the hill, it's heaven. And, this beautiful world where none of this terrible stuff ever happened. And of course, you don't live in that world.
Right. And you can't help. It's this juxtaposition where you want to celebrate and enjoy that joy, but you can't because different.
You can't. Yeah, you are in this world. You're not in that world, right? And so that is what he plays with most in that movie and in that book, and that's what the book does with the movie. It's really that's the complete experience,
cool.
And it's like it's such a brilliantly thought through piece of work. It's one of these times where I'm like, this movie, like, there's plenty of people that love the movie. It's fantastic. But like, I'm waiting for the time, and it's probably going to be way past when he stops making movies or whatever.
Yeah.
That people actually sit down and go like, what was this dude talking about? Like, what were these movies really about? And I think that he has a much more beautiful, interesting, and challenging worldview than most people would ever give him credit for.
I think he intends to help that conversation along. He's talked again in this Video Archives podcast about he absolutely is making his final movie. And he plans to write a ton more. He wants to do plays and books.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And so I think maybe he is thinking about the same thing you are, in that, not that he wants to correct the perception, but he wants to say more of what he has to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really satisfying. I think it's really beautiful. And I feel like it's especially in the face of people not being happy with his work all the time. He just maintains consistency in doing the work.
Right.
Like,
he says
which
that's
is
great.
Essentially goes back to what we were saying before. It's just like, that's the thing that you actually have to be responsible to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fred Galpern, man, it is a fantastic thing to see you again.
You too, buddy.
This has been a really, really lovely conversation,
this
man. This is really, really something. What do you got going on next? What's up for you?
So let's see. I've got this vacation coming up. My daughter and I are driving down the East Coast to North Carolina and then Atlanta, Georgia. That's kind of the cap to the summer for us. And, by day, my day job is I run a small video game development and publishing company called Puzzle Nation. We are,
nice.
We're about to put out a very exciting project we've been working on for 2 years. We do all kinds of like crossword puzzle, word search, Sudoku. And so we have this new app, this mobile app that gives you all kinds of rewards for solving puzzles and all that stuff. So that'll come out in the next few, not exactly sure when, soon.
And we'll be very happy if she loves exactly the kind of stuff you make. I'll make sure that she buys your stuff.
I'll send you some links, and then I'll give her like free coins and stuff. Like just
I love it.
Just have
yes,
fun.
please.
Yeah. And then I've got some songs that are partially recorded, and I intend to finish those soon. Don't know when.
Right on.
Yeah, and maybe
are we able to put some links in the show notes here that people can see?
The easiest thing would be if they want to check out my music, go to plugpvd.com. So plugpvd, that's the abbreviation for Providence. And they can find Spotify and Apple Music links, and there's some live music and interviews and all that fun stuff.
Oh, right on, man. Well, listen, thank you very much for being on the show and for being a very excellent friend for a very long time. I'm proud to be talking to you, and it's like, it's like my favorite kinds of communication is like when you can just pick back up with someone.
Oh yeah.
Like no time has passed. And
right.
Like this was exactly that magical moment for me. I'm so happy to be talking to you again.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I mean, I feel the same, I don't want to embarrass you, but you're like one of a handful of creative people that I have so much respect that I kind of idolize you in a little way.
Oh boy, we're going to edit this part out, but I appreciate it.
No, don't. It's true, Dan. It's not just your art and everything. It's your ideas and the way that you talk about the stuff that you love. It's a huge inspiration to me.
I appreciate that. I can tell the audience almost like my feelings about all this stuff come from working at Looking Glass with you and Jen and the crew.
Oh yeah.
Like that is the most formative artistic time of my life. And I wouldn't be doing the things I do the way I do them without having experienced that with you guys. Yeah. So I appreciate it very much.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me to do this. It's been great.
Awesome. All right. Thanks very much. And we'll see you next week on Love It.